Before we continue, I've been personally funding the Finding Genius podcast for 4.5 years now, which has led to 2,700 plus interviews of clinicians, researchers, scientists, CEOs, and other amazing people who are working to advance science and improve our lives and our world. Even though this podcast gets 100,000 plus downloads a month, we need your help to reach hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Please visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click on Support Us. We have 3 levels of membership from $10 to $49 a month, including perks such as the ability to see ahead in our interview calendar and ask questions of upcoming guests, transcripts of podcasts you're interested in, the ability to request specific topics or guests, and more. Visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click Support Us today. Now, back to the show. Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers, because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button, and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD, and working on a product to help people overcome these problems, because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius podcast, now part of the Finding Genius Foundation. My guest is Stephen Aizenstat. He's the founder of Pacifica Graduate Institute. He does what's called dream tending. He also runs what's called the Academy of Imagination. So we're going to talk about dreams and how you can access the greatest power you have for creativity, connection, and purpose. That's the name of his book. It's the Imagination Matrix. Again, how to access the greatest power you have for creativity, connection, and purpose. So Steve, thank you for coming.
Oh, it's great. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your background and how you got involved in dreams and dream analysis.
Well, that happened a long time ago. It was early on in life. I'd always been fascinated with imagination, in good ways, hard ways. In other words, family life was tough. It was a challenge at times, and I would go into the bedroom, really, and spend time there. It was both a refuge and also a time to really imagine into dream and dream imagery. Then life goes on. I go to UCLA. I'm involved with courses there and all that kind of campus life. And I met somebody who really knew a great deal about dreams. And I shared dreams with this person, and I was really touched by the depth and breadth of what's possible there. And so dreams became an essential part of my life. And when I founded Pacifica Graduate Institute, dreams were at the center place. It's an institute really orienting around the field of depth psychology. So that's Carl Jung and that whole tradition of women and men and elders and people. And dreams have always been integral.
What do you do today with dreams? Like, do you use them to help people? Do people use them on themselves, or do third parties analyze them? Like, what's the program about?
Yeah, so dream tending. So that I purposefully selected that, not dream analysis nor dream interpretation, although that's part of it. To tend a dream is to really listen carefully to what the dream is presenting. Dreams come forward with extraordinary information guidance, right? They also offer a resource to draw upon. Of course, a lot of times people are frightened by their dreams because nightmares are up right at the moment. In fact, in today's world, more people are remembering dreams than ever before. And I think that's a good thing on one hand, but on the other hand, the reason for that is because there's so many dreams that are bringing imagery that's frightening or scary given what conditions are ecologically. And,
What do you mean? How do you know that people are remembering more and they're having more negative dreams?
Well, they're not negative dreams, but they are frightening dreams, for sure that. And we do know because there are a number of places that are doing research studies that go and ask and discover. So the International Association for the Study of Dreams just finished a big research project, and they found that a lot of people are remembering dreams, more so now than just 3-5 years ago.
Right, but you said the dreams are not negative, but yet they're scary. So is it a positive scariness, or what do you mean? Like what are the character of the dreams or the nature of them?
Well, this frightening dreams, the four themes that are very frightening, they're really up right at the moment. One is being chased, and of course that has to do with intruder and that whole thing. Another one is zombie dreams of some kind of character that looks like zombie, and that of course makes sense given the COVID virus and the threat and the somehow that I'm going to feel attacked by something. Another dream is intruder, somebody breaking into the house. And of course, again, that makes sense. And then there's other dreams that are frightening, tidal wave dreams, house on fire, those kinds of things. Things that really evoke fear and reaction. Part of that, though, is not necessarily only us being anxious and agitated in the world. Part of that is something deeper inside, creating a dream, a message that wants to be sent. And that's one way to get our attention, right? One way of getting our attention is to present something that is going to really be remembered upon awakening. And scary dreams often do that.
Yeah, but some of this stuff is not real, zombies and things like that. Some of it does seem to be real. So,
Yeah,
what about dreams about things that have happened in a person's life? A negative conversation they have with somebody, maybe that comes up. Seems like these are just kind of nebulous, not rooted in reality type things. More, I guess, maybe psychological association.
Yeah, psychological associations, amplified to certain imagery, because the images in dreams often speak in riddled rhyme metaphor. On the other hand, people dream very particularly about a fight that they had with a friend or a partner, being attacked at work, somebody being hypercritical, an experience early in life that was very traumatic and then just got triggered during the awake hours, usually between the last 24 and 48 hours. Those dreams are gripping, and they do wake us up at night. And I think what's happening is it's a remembrance of something that's incredibly painful and traumatic and wanting more attention brought to it.
Okay, so what do you do with these dreams? Do you have a protocol or a course where people set themselves up to remember more or analyze them, or what is the coursework about?
Yeah, exactly. So there is a protocol. There is something to do, actually. It's not necessarily analyzing or interpreting. I mean, often it's pretty clear what the dream is referring to in this context. What we do is first safety and protection, because the dreams are scary, right? They are. So we have to have some way of creating safety, protection. There's lots of ways of doing that. There's often other figures that have come in dreams that provide a certain amount of support, certain amount of safety. There are people in our life that, like a good friend or a colleague that is really helpful and supportive. We need to have that figure in the room, imaginally or figuratively, one way or the other, to create safety and support. Then what we do is take the scary figure from inside and put it outside of ourselves, right? From inside to outside, which means that if it's going to stay inside, I'm scared to death, and that thing is really freaking me out, and it's still internal. That's going to keep me agitated for days, usually. To take it from inside and put it outside, either in a sketch or in a piece of writing or in some kind of anything. Some people will use clay to sculpt something, anything to get it outside, because then I'm not identified. I'm not the one that's so scary. I am able to place the figure that is frightening outside of myself. Then I can have a conversation with it. So the first one is to get out of the identification, it being possessed by it, and then second, into a relationship with the figure that's so frightening or scary.
I don't know. What's an example? I don't understand. What do you mean?
Okay, so let's say last night a dream comes, and the dream comes with somebody that is really breaking down the door and trying to get to me, get inside the house. And let's imagine it's the house I'm living in or the apartment that I'm living in. And okay, this is my home place, and that person is intruding, and they're either coming up the stairs and breaking down the door, or they're just trying to barge their way in. I'm scared. I wake up and back in sweat. There's that panicky feeling happening. All right, so what am I going to do with that? Oh, I can interpret it. Well, that image has to do with something going on in my life that's very invasive, very intrusive, and I get that. Well, that's one thing to do. The hard part about going in that direction is helpful for a bit, but what are you going to do with that intruder, that attacker? It's not going to go away, really. It's still going to come back, maybe the next night or the night or two after, right? Here's what I suggest. That comes, first get the safety, like I said, get some support, get it, and name it. Put it outside of yourself, make a drawing of it, make a sketch of it, do a little piece of writing around it. Who are you? Who's visiting now? Who is this figure? Now, it's scary. So the way to lessen the fear and the fright is to get really particular. Like, let's say it is a intruder that's kind of monstrous. Well, if I just say that, how many intruders are monstrous? You can go on for hours talking about all that stuff. But if you really see the figure, the actuality of that one that's in the dream, and again, very particular, you sketch it. How is this one different than any other one, right? Really particular about it, outside of yourself with support and protection. Then you can begin to have a dialogue. Hey, this is not okay. It's not okay for you to come in and attack me like this. No, etc. So you begin that way. Then the second thing that happens, hey, who are you? I mean, who are you really? And the way to get to that is think about Star Wars, right? It's like one of my colleagues and friends with Joseph Campbell, the hero with 1,000 faces. He went to visit with George Lucas before George Lucas did the movie Star Wars, actually. And, what he shows in that scene where Luke is going to go after the scary figure, this figure that is really awful, Darth Vader, right? The Death Star, the terrifying one, the one that's really aggressive and assertive. But he can't go there alone. He's got to go there with support. So he's got Yoda, he's got Obi-Wan, he's got support with him. Then he confronts the figure, right? And what does he find out? He finds out once he confronts him, sets the limit, no, it's not okay. Then he unveils the figure. In other words, the mask comes off, and he sees who's behind the veil, who's behind that mask. And of course, that is his dad, his father, who becomes very important for the rest of his life's journey.
Okay. Well, what happens usually with people's dreams? They'll be chased. There'll be something bothering them. I would think within 15 minutes of waking up, they would forget about everything.
I do.
What typically happens? How does this appear to help people?
Yeah, I gotcha. It's like in 15 minutes. Well, for me, sometimes it's 3 minutes, right? If I don't write it down, if it's really scary like that, it will come back in 15 minutes. And if it's really scary like that, it might come again and again. It recurs. These are the kinds of dreams that do recur over and again, right? So what I do, and what I think is helpful for myself and the people that I work with, is look, it's, you got to get that support. You got to make a statement. You got to create a boundary. You got to get it outside of yourself so you're not possessed by it, constantly threatened by it. When that happens, here's the consequence. If we're threatened by that one, it's always inside. It's always, that threatening to hurt us in some way. Then we're going to be very frightened about what we see out in the world. Because when we see somebody that is like that a little bit, carries a bit of that same kind of tendency, then we're going to be really reactive, scary. So we'll put a lot of our life energy into avoiding that at all costs because it's reflecting the very thing that's going on inside, right? All costs will be pulled back, and no matter what, when I see that one, I walk into a room and somebody has that personality quality, I'll run the other way, right? Or the opposite, I get attracted to that and then partner with that person to make it all horrible. So what to do? The thing to do is, as I said, you got to get it from inside out, get it on a piece of paper, make a sketch, make a doodle, write a little bit, create the boundary, and then figure out, hey, what lives behind this person's mask, right? What else is here? Who's present? Who's visiting now? And who are you? Who are you really, right? Usually these acting out figures are caught somewhere in adolescence in some form or fashion. So we want to know, who are you? Just like Luke did with taking the veil off, the mask off. We got to know who lives behind the scary facade, that persona, that mask.
Well, who is in most people's dreams? Is it someone they know that, the dream just interprets it as like some shadowy figure, and, upon reflection, they can figure it's Bob at work. That's who it is. Or like, how does this tend to resolve?
Yeah, that's the right question. Often it is somebody that is a familiar, right? It can be somebody like a critical parent or an abusive parent. It can be somebody at work that is very abusive, critical, often critical or judgmental. Somebody that is in awake life threatening in some way, right? They're out to hurt us a lot of these images are people that we feel are better than we are. And so we feel less than, it's those kinds of things. So they're there. They're in the dream time. We see them in awake time as well. The key is, hey, if I'm just going to try to get through life and not deal with this, and there's ways of doing that, right? We can distract ourselves away. We can numb ourselves. There's all kinds of ways that are not necessarily healthy or productive, but there are ways to keep that fear or that dread at a distance. The other possibility is just what I said, so I'll say it a third time. From inside out, put it on a piece of paper, sketch, draw, maybe a little piece of clay or something, sculpt, doesn't matter what. And then you have a dialogue with that particular figure that came in the dream. If the dream is coming with that figure in it again and again, time to pay attention. It's like the psyche or the imagination saying, attention, 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 do something with this figure.
So what happens, do people have to confront person in real life? Does it lead to that? Or are they able to resolve it just in their own head? And usually that satisfies them?
Yeah, that's a great question. The two things happen, right? If I do confront that person in real life, and sometimes that's important, and I've done the work that I just described, I'm going to be very different in the way that I'm going to confront. I'm not going to feel victimized. I'm not going to feel as afraid. I'm not going to be without resources. I'm going to feel a certain kind of capability. So when I do make that confrontation, I'll come from a much stronger place. So that's really helpful that way. If I don't confront, the other thing that happens, I want to say it this way, is when I do that work with the dreams, with the nightmarish figure, because we're working in imagination. That's the book, The Imagination Matrix. We're working in that matrix of imagination. The thing that happens is when I'm doing that kind of inner work, I'm then not as vulnerable to those kinds of figures finding my vulnerability and attacking me. It is remarkable how often people will say, Steve, I did the work that we talked about, but now, that critical person at work is not on my case so much, not after me as much, because somehow we build up the inner strength, or that we take care of that business that was not finished, that was unfinished, and there's not that vulnerability. So the persecutor that's out there, or the tormentor that's out there, doesn't see that vulnerability and tends to stay away. So it works in both directions that way.
Oh, interesting. Huh. So it doesn't, are people relieved that it sometimes won't involve a direct confrontation with the person that's haunting them?
Oh my goodness, so relieved. And the word haunting is the right word. True enough, I just was working with somebody the other day, and that's what they were experiencing, the haunting. They kept saying, I woke up and it's this haunting, and damn, it's again and again and again. And that haunting's here, and it's been here for as long as I can remember, since I've been a kid. And so I did the exact process we talked about. And that person says, whoa, I'm feeling the haunting leaving now. And my guess is in the world, because this has happened now hundreds of times in my work with people, the same figures that were doing the haunting begin to lessen because, hey, they don't see a victim, somebody that's helpless, somebody that's vulnerable in that area. Usually persecutors will look for victims, right? And when they don't find that victim person, they'll stay away.
So what kind of dreams or situations are easy for the person to resolve, and which ones are really tricky and pernicious?
Okay, to really cut to the bottom line, the ones that are really difficult, really, really difficult, and I would back up from the method that I just described, are when there's, severe disturbance in a person's life. And I mean, all the way to genocide that is somewhere, or real significant kind of abuse. I don't really move in that direction emotionally or psychologically to, quote, try to integrate the positive aspect of that into my life. However, crucial in all the work that I've done with trauma and with people that have really suffered through one sort of, nightmarish experience in their life or another, when it's severe like that, have to get it out from inside. Because if I just walk through my life and that's always inside of me, I'm going to be forever reactive and just suffer the consequence of those kinds of situations. So get it outside. Don't need to integrate it. Don't need to psychologize it. Just get it outside and have the conversation. Hey, I'm here. You're there. This is the arrangement. I'm witnessing your presence, but you're not going to come in here anymore. Something along those lines, right? So that's the most severe. The other images that are frightening, I think, are very useful. Nightmares. Nightmares can be very constructive, because the same figure that is haunting, as you said, or nightmarish, that same one, like Darth Vader, has a lot of possibility when we begin to develop our relationship, set a boundary, and so on. They can become very supportive. They can be allies. They don't necessarily need to be nemesis. That's that old saying, right? Sometimes our enemy makes our best ally. So it's very helpful to get into that depth of that conversation.
Do you ever suggest to help people to try to set up a deliberate dream in which they will take an action to beat back the thing that's haunting them? Can you coach people, and are they more likely to have the dream that you kind of help them think about if you do so? Can you do that?
There are ways of doing that. I mean, what people are familiar with is the thing called lucid dreaming, where you actually bring your consciousness into the dream state and take action. That's part of it. For me, it's working in imagination, right? And that's the subject of the imagination matrix, to really develop the companions internally that can be present for you and with you when these motifs come forward. When they do, then what happens is not only me, goes up against those figures, but the dream figures that are supportive, those figures of imagination that are on our side, not on our case, that are supportive, not aggressive or persecutory, those figures, then they can go up against the ones that are so difficult and invasive. So it is possible to develop and cultivate relationships with figures so that when those others come, there's a way to interact with them more productively, constructively.
Can you give someone hours that they normally wouldn't have in a dream? Like, hey, this difficult person at work, when you dream tonight, you're going to have really super rebuttals that catch them off guard, not you. And anything they say is not going to upset you. You're going to have this shield around you emotionally where you'll hear what they say, but it's not going to emotionally rile you. And you're going to be able to, like that kind of stuff, like future pacing, maybe NLP kind of things, so that in a dream, they can take back their power maybe in the dream as well.
The answer for me is yes, which is the whole purpose of writing this book. Just to be really direct about it. That's the bottom line, right? How do we cultivate those inner resources? So when that stuff comes at night or during the day, for that matter, that we have for me, it would be imaginal figures, or it would be the support that's on the inside that equips us with the capability that when the assault comes, now we're talking about nightmares, there's also the whole other side of it, not only the assault, but when the opportunity comes, that we have the capacity to meet that opportunity in a different way, a more productive way. The answer is yes. Yes, if we cultivate, as we cultivate relationship with the imagination, let's just make it real simple. When we cultivate relationship with the imagination, then we have resources, images, figures, landscapes that come forward to us, even affect, emotion that really is present. So when the figures come, they then are met by something other than just fear and reactivity.
Well, what if someone's on medication and they don't dream, or they just don't remember their dreams, but they're still disturbed by them, or their sleep is screwed up, they have apnea or whatever it is, therefore they don't dream, or their REM sleep is disturbed? Like, what do you do in those cases, or can you do anything?
Yeah, for sure. The idea is that sometimes if a person's really hurting, that, and they are not dreaming, maybe that's for the best. Just leave it be. Or the other side of that argument is, hey, a person's really dissociated. And now, you're going to work with dreams, it's going to be contraindicated, it's going to make them more nuts. All that doesn't seem to be the case, actually. Everybody dreams. We dream 3 to 4 times a night. The question is, are we remembering or not remembering? Medication, substance, all kinds of things will often disturb dreaming or prevent us from remembering. But I think it is helpful to remember dreams, and the way to do that is very simple. And there's 3 steps. Number 1 is just by having the conversation we're having, people listening, they're getting interested, curious about dreams. We open curiosity and dreams are invited in. It's like a good friend, right? When we get curious with the friend presents itself more fully. Second skill is just simply going to bed at night, following that same idea. Say to yourself 3 times tonight, I'm going to remember dreams. Tonight, I'm going to remember dreams. 3 times in the morning before you reach for the cell phone or the technology or the list of to-dos for the day or the fear that sets in. Just take that moment between sleep time, and awake time. Is called liminal space, and just present with a dream journal next to your bedside, either a tablet or a written journal, a paper and pen, and take the moment. You can even, some people stay in the same posture and they write down whatever it is that's come forward in the night. And then the third, let me just give one more, this one forever, right? You work with the skills that I offer, other people offer, and you work with a dream, but let's say nothing's happening and you're just not remembering anything. Go to a dream that you've remembered or an imaginal experience that you've remembered. That's where the imagination matrix really comes in. We're all part of the deep imagination. So just listen and remember something that came in the night, a dream-like experience or an awake dream, an experience that's dream-like during awake time. And it could be 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 3 years ago. And just work with it in the ways that I'm talking about or the ways that you can read about. And it's amazing how that invites dream recall. It just so increases recall for people.
What if you made an app that acted like an alarm, and when the alarm goes off, the person presses it, and then it says, don't forget to write down your dreams, and it kind of coaches you for like 30 seconds or a minute, or like those sounds you could listen to at night when you sleep, like ocean or crackling of a fire, and maybe periodically a soft voice will say like, remember your dreams or something. And like that might be a cool way to help people write stuff down and remember.
Oh, sure. I think so. You have the permission support of your partner if you're in a partnership relationship at one sort of the next. Yeah, bringing something into the bed itself, right? Because that means awakening. You're going to wake up and you're going to write, and there'll be activity in the bed. So you got to have an arrangement. But I think it's really helpful to do something like that. Yeah. And we don't even need an app, although that's possible. But if I know that I'm in bed, and actually now I don't have it on the bedside, but I bring whatever device I'm going to record in right there, right next to my pillow, I'm ready. And I'll be very open to the wake up call when it comes, and then I'm present and available to write things down or to record things. And some people just actually do that. They'll record their dream. The eyes stay shut, they push the little record, and then it'll just tell the dream. So I think it's very helpful that way. It's a really good way to remember dreams.
Okay. What else in your book? Like, what are some of the other major themes that are covered?
Well, yeah, so this is journeying. This book, I worked for decades with dream and dream work, and this book takes it another step further, right? So we're taking a journey into the world of deep imagination, into the dream time. And how do you take the journey? How do you journey through the imagination matrix? That's the topic of the book. And a lot of people do it with plant medicines or with A, B, and C, right? This is a way of bringing yourself to the imagination, finding your, what I call soul companions, the figures that will accompany you there. And everybody has their different name. There's no attachment to a particular name. But you learn the ways of finding the portal, the opening, the way in to the imagination. And then you follow through into the imagination, you journey and you discover what's possible for you there. So the big news is it's not with the rational mind, right? We let go of the busy mind, the rational mind, and we develop curiosity. So I offer a lot of skills and tools of opening curiosity, activating curiosity. What are the ways of taking the journey into the imagination? What are the ways then inside of the imagination, the deep imagination, autonomous imagination, the matrix of imagination? Then how do you gather resources? Resources that are going to be very practical. And the thing for me is that, I work with dream and imagination, but as you described, I founded an educational institution. I do a lot of consulting for corporations, so on. So it's, hey, I care about people, and does this work and improve the quality of a person's life physically, right? Emotionally, psychologically? That's really what's important to me. And by traveling in imagination, there are resources that will inform that. And there's two more things. You develop a kind of intelligence. And we all know about IQ. That's intellectual intelligence. And a lot of us have now gotten familiar with emotional intelligence. This is imaginal intelligence. We allow imagination to come forward, to deepen, and to even increase. And that is what happens when we do that. We go into the world with a different lens, a different way of being present. And then we pick up the sparks, the cues, the particular hints that give insight into our innate genius. And that's, for me, what's the most important, our authentic sense of calling. Not the script, not what social media describes us as to how we should be, but that authentic, inside-out place that really makes a difference, that really touches who I am and how I want to be. It's not rooted in parental supervision and so on.
What's the best way for people to start learning about, your protocols and the Institute? Should they read the book first, and, where can they get it, and where are other resources for people to learn more?
Yeah. So first is dreamtending.com. So everything I've just shared, including the ways of remembering dreams, the common dream themes, how to work with nightmares, all that will be on dreamtending.com available. The new book, The Imagination Matrix, is just coming out a number of weeks. And in that book, I not only name everything I've just talked about, but very particularized exercises, stories that elaborate everything that I've talked about, case studies. So if you read that, it's really meant to give guidance and offer a tool set, a toolkit that gives you what you need to move forward and explore this area, this range of possibility.
Okay. And the book again, if you could just repeat the title and ask, let people know where they can get it.
Yeah, so The Imagination Matrix, it's right now on all the carriers, so it's on Amazon. It's available for pre-order through October 24th. After that, you can order it. And it is something. It's a really good, the people that have worked with it have really reported it being very useful in terms of a tool set, skills, an idea, a path forward.
Excellent. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's an unusual world of dreams I don't know much about, but it's been really revealing, and it makes sense why you do what you do. So thank you.
Hey, you're very welcome. Thanks for hosting me. Pleasure to be here.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.